Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail. Mission Whitetail, episode 57. Just got back from Africa. Got my buddy Lucas Kincaid in here behind the scenes. Lucas, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good.
Good. Lucas had a nice little break. He went up and did some bear hunting and turkey hunting. Got him a nice turkey, and your dad got a couple bears.
Yep.
Pretty good stuff, man. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think our schedules were about in sync. You were gone and I was gone at the same time, so that worked out good.
Yep.
Guys, just got back from Africa, went over to Botswana and hunted for 7 days there with them, and then went down to South Africa, did a little work down there, and then got to hunt for 3 or 4 days down there too. And I know this is a Mission Whitetail heavy podcast. But as always, when you're hunting, and especially when you're bow hunting, you can relate things to whitetail hunting. And I did a lot of that on this trip. New bow, got the new prime, all decked out, ready to go. I did shoot an axis deer a couple weeks ago with the prime, and then obviously took it with me to Africa. And I'm a little paranoid, Lucas. Like, I took my Matthews, it was in my case. I took a double bow case, and I had my Matthews, because you never know, man. You get a new weapon system that you're not familiar with, and you don't know how it's going to perform, and I wanted to have my tried and true. I mean, that V3X, I've had it for 3 seasons, or this going maybe the 3rd season, and it's served me very well. Yeah. So first things first, the prime. I always, especially with new equipment, try and be the devil's advocate or poke holes in it. Mm-hmm. And the only thing about that prime I can even remotely complain about, and it's not even really a complaint, is it's a little bit slow.
Yeah.
You know, whereas with, say, I guess I should go through how I've got it set up. It's 73.5 pounds, 29-inch draw. I've got a black gold dual tracks on it, a Hampski rest. It shoots so dadgum good. Mm-hmm. It just aims great. It's so balanced, and I think that's what that means when I say it aims great. I feel like when I draw it and put it on target, the pin is just right there.
Yeah.
And it's noticeably different than bows I've shot in the past. And then the draw cycle is ultra smooth. Mm-hmm. And you know, always talk about muscle memory. You know, your muscles will figure it out. You'll get a feel for it no matter what bow it is, and that's true. But on this hunt, we were hunting in these ground blinds. You know, they were like a stone or concrete ground blind that was half buried in the ground, right up on a water hole. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the animals would be 4 or 5 yards away when the wind was right. And then, you know, like a big kudu or something would come in on the back side of the water hole, and I'd have cows or impala or whatever it may be. When I say cows, I mean female kudu. Yep. Real close. And getting drawn was a little bit of a challenge because there was animals so close, and that's where that real smooth draw cycle came into play. Yep. I was able to, you know, just draw the bow, really, no big back end hump, nothing aggressive, just a steady, slow pull and push, and boom, I'm at full draw. There's a lot to say for that. Mm-hmm. You know, I never spooked a single animal drawing my bow. We shot 7 animals over there. The point of the hunt was to chase the big kudu and the Kalahari. We were in Botswana, and the area we hunted is called Tholo Safaris. Tolo, not Tholo, Tolo. The H is silent. It's Tholo, and that's Setswana hope I'm saying that right. That's their local language, and that actually means kudu in their local language. And they've got a ton of kudu and a bunch of big kudu.
Yeah.
And to me, kudu is one of the coolest animals in the world. You know, they can get as big as 600-700 pounds. You know, 55-inch long horns, spiraling horns, absolutely gorgeous. And the rut was in full swing.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you'd see a couple cows, there'd be a bull with them. A lot of times those bigger bulls are hard to shoot. They're hard to get on.
Mm-hmm.
But when they, like every other animal, they let their guard down during the rut, and they're locked in on those cows. So that was the point, was to go to Botswana and hunt those big kudu. Any and everything else was going to be a bonus.
Yep.
So I ended up shooting 2 kudu, shot a warthog, big warthog, shot a wildebeest, shot a nyala in South Africa when I went down there, and then unexpectedly to me, I shot a giant roan. A roan antelope is the 3rd largest antelope in Africa, 700 plus pounds. We thought it was the number 2, and we actually, around the fire one night, got in a little bit of an argument with some other PHs.
Yeah.
And the way it goes is the eland is the largest antelope in Africa, followed by the bongo. The bongo is number 2, and in most things you read, the roan is supposed to be number 2, but the bongo is actually larger, and then the roan. So it's the 3rd largest antelope in Africa, and this particular bull is probably going to be the number 2 all time with a bow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and number 5 all time with any weapon.
Huh.
The largest roan ever taken was with a crossbow.
Yep.
And it was guided by my buddy Jason Stone. And then there is like 2 down from that. There was a rifle kill, and then there was another one shot with a bow, like a vertical bow.
Yep.
So I consider that the number 1 bow kill, and then mine will be right after that. So it'll be the number 2 bow kill of all time, and was unexpected. Right place, right time, giant bull. Guys I was hunting with knew of the bull, but nobody knew that he was that big.
Yeah.
So pretty excited about that. Let's dive into what we learned on this trip. Obviously, the prime bow, I really, really like it and looking forward to continue shooting it. When this podcast airs, Lucas and I are going to be in Argentina, and I will have the prime with me. We're going to chase a red stag down there for a week and see how we can do. So be taking the prime down there. My arrow setup for this was my same as my whitetail setup. I was shooting the Victory Rip TKO Elites, 470 grains, 4 fletch Q2 eyes. Did shoot the new, what is it, Halo Knox?
Yep.
Halos, yeah. I like them. There's still a little bit of a pain to turn off, but I am getting better at it. It was operator error. Mm-hmm. You just, when you go to take them off your string, you just got to push the little button in when you pull them off the string. And that can pose a little bit of a problem in the dark.
Yeah.
Because you can't find the button. Now, if you turn your hat light on or you got your phone flashlight or something, you can find it. But it is basically a 2-hand procedure because you got to hold the bow in one hand, the arrow in the other. Mm-hmm. That's my only knock on that lighted knock. Yep. Is the way you turn them off, because if you just pull it right off the string, they fire off. But they all perform great. I had none turn on when I put them on the string, which is the issue I was having with the nocturnals. They lit up every time. Great green light even during the day in the bright sun. Could see them tracking. We got all of this on video, so we're going to put together an African hunting film that we should have ready in a couple months. Lucas, we're going to get all the footage back, and he's going to put his together. And the guy over there in Africa that filmed it, Chris, he's going to put together. So we'll have some good stuff coming from this trip. Let's talk broadheads, because that was one of the main things. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I get pretty paranoid. I love to test stuff and try it and see if it's going to give me an advantage. And then in testing, you're like, oh man, this is going to be great. But then, boom, all of a sudden you got to put them in the hunt.
Yeah.
And that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yep.
And where I get nervous or paranoid making a change, because what I've used in the past has worked really good and it's hard to change. So on this trip, we had the G5 new T2 two-blade broadhead, and then we had the Mega Meats. We've played around with the Mega Meats quite a bit in testing. You know, I've got those moles with the jello, with the slat board that we shoot them through, and man, they were producing great big holes. Was a little concerned about the penetration of the Mega Meat, and then the blades, because it's a 3-blade 2-inch cut, the blades tend to bend a little bit.
Yeah.
Not break, but bend. And I was a little concerned about that. But hey, I want to shoot it into some animals and see how they really perform. So that's what we did. And we were testing these things on some big animals. I always equate Africa and North America hunting to like freshwater and saltwater fishing. North America being freshwater bass and brim.
Yep.
Africa being saltwater, where everything is predator prey all day, every day. The animals over there are tough. Their vitals are more far forward, so they're more behind the scapula and shoulder, so you got to shoot them further forward.
Yep.
So if you get a broadhead that really performs well on the bigger African plains game, man, it's going to do great on our whitetail.
Yeah.
So first up was the T2. I had 2 of those. The guys at G5, I got hold of 2 of those, the T2. And the T2 is basically a souped-up Rage Trypan. Now, I've been a Trypan guy for the last 7 or 8 years. Shot a ton of stuff with it. Shot a ton of stuff in Africa with it. Broadheads perform really good. Lately, the blades seem to be a little bit duller. The no collar tolerances on them, I won't say, I'm not bashing this broadhead. I won't say they weren't good, but it seemed like the tolerances for the openings were off just a little bit. And I don't know if it's because they've changed things or what. Still a great head. Still got them. Shot a bunch of stuff this past season with them. And the T2, the blades were definitely sharper. G5 uses those German Lutz blades, and man, they are razor scary sharp. Like if you look at them too hard, they're going to cut your eye.
Yeah.
That's how sharp they are. And the ferrule, it's a stainless steel ferrule, and really strong. You can just feel it. When I looked at them at ATA, I was just like, man, this is just a souped up Trypan. One thing that I did not notice when I was looking at them at the ATA show was how tight the blade retention was. Like it's almost hard. I mean, you just about can't open them with your fingers.
Yeah.
Like you got to if you got it on an arrow, you got to like push it into a desk or a piece of wood to get it to open. And so that actually made me a little bit nervous. I was like, man, is this thing really? Are these really going to open?
Yeah.
Everything else I loved about them. There's no collar. It's a no collar blade retention system. You know, there's only one pin in there. It's a very simple to design, super sharp blades, great tip, and I was just nervous about the retention and if these things were going to open. So as luck would have it, the first critter that came in that I was going to shoot was this big 80-pound warthog. He's got some giant tusk. He looks like he's got a toilet seat in his mouth when he comes in. And Corey, the guy I was hunting with, he loves warthogs, and he came in. You know, I was on the left side of the blind. He was on the right side of the blind, so he couldn't see outside of the window. And I saw this warthog come in. I was like, man, that's a good one. And I thought that to myself, and I said, Corey's a big pig at the water. and he leaned his head out where he could see out of the ground blind, and he saw this thing. He goes, "Shoot him right now, Joe." You know, in his British accent. He's like, shoot him, Joe. That's a good one. You know, he was all fired up about this warthog. So things 15, 16 yards away, broadside, and I got drawn, no problem, settled the pin, and I scooted my pin back just a hair, so I'd shoot him in the back of the vitals, because I had an opportunity there. You know, it's a pretty thin-skinned animal, you know, only about 80 pounds. You get up in his shoulders, and that, you know, he's pretty stout there, but you get back a little bit, you're really going to see how these things open, right? It's skin, meat, maybe I clip a rib, but it's a smaller African animal, and I would argue the back part of them is just as thin, if not thinner, than a big whitetail buck. So zipped him. He spun out of there, blood shot everywhere over the water hole, and he hauled butt, kind of out of sight. Get out, and I can't find the arrow. I mean, I know it went through him. I saw it go through him, but I can't find the arrow.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, we'll come back, look for the arrow later. It's probably just buried up under some dirt. You know, we'll come back and find it later. So we start trailing blood. Incredible blood trail. About 90 yards, he ran. Found him. Big 2-inch entry hole. Big 2-inch exit hole. So I'm like, okay, this thing had no problem opening up. This is everything I got out of the trypan. I just got to find the arrow now.
Yeah.
So we go back and we're looking and looking and looking for the arrow. We found it. It was 50 or 60 yards on the other side of where I shot him.
My goodness.
Now it could have tumbled some through there, but I mean, and I was flat, you know, I was shooting flat. So it literally went through him like hot butter and was 50 or 60 yards on the other side of him. The broadhead was like you hadn't even shot it. It had blood on it, but the blades folded right back up. There was no chafing, no bending, no nothing. And I was like, this is something. Man, I am impressed with this broadhead. So next up on the list, you know, we were hunting kudu, but we were seeing bulls, but nothing big. And we ended up switching blinds because we shot that warthog, and we switched to another blind that afternoon. And a big Gims buck came in. Gims buck, guys, if you don't know what those are, some guys call them oryx. Gims buck, you can Google them. It's a big antelope. They're gray in color, got some white on their face, kind of like a clown, and then like clown paint, and then they've got great big tall black straight horns. And man, those things are vicious on lions. like they'll get down on their front knees, and they'll run a whole pack of lions off, because those big horns, you know, they'll be 40 inches long, and they're like daggers on the top of their heads, and they're pretty bad machines. But he came in, and this was a natural water hole. So the back side of it was like 30, 32 yards away out of a ground blind. And Gims buck comes in, get a good broadside shot. This one I shot forward, right where you're supposed to on African game, kind of through the scapula. Right through the scapula, obviously through the other side. We saw the arrow hit on the other side. He turned, hauled butt, like they always do, obviously. Got out, went right to the arrow. It was about 25, 30 yards on the other side of the water hole where I shot him. Again, head's in perfect condition. This is a big 400, 450-pound animal.
Man.
Followed it up, incredible blood trail. And again, 2-inch entry, 2-inch exit. Broadhead's in great shape. My tripans, you know, those blades used to bend a little bit. The tip is that hypodermic tip would bend a little bit. Now, you know, a lot of people freak out about that, about the integrity, if you will, of the broadhead after it's gone through the animal. Man, I'm okay with the broadhead bending. I mean, I don't want it breaking inside of them, but if it's bending and cutting and destroying and killing the animal quick and leaving me a great blood trail, and I've got an entry and exit hole, I don't know what more you want. I'm okay. I'm not planning on reshooting the broadhead. I mean, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, you could save a little bit of money by being able to shoot them again, and you can get replacement blades for them and shoot them again. But man, I just wanted creating devastation and killing that animal as fast as possible and being super accurate and hit right where I'm aiming.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the T2 G5 broadheads. Next up were the mega meats. Lucas, you were with us in Texas, but you were not in the blind with me when I shot the axis with the mega meat, but you saw the animal.
Oh, yeah.
And we were impressed with the mega meat.
Yep.
Big fist size hole on the entry. Exit's not quite as big, but it's still half the size of your fist. 200, what was he, 250, 240, 240 pounds, 250
like
pounds.
That.
So equivalent to a big Midwest whitetail. And that was a further shot, 30-something yards. And it did the trick. He didn't go 50, 60 yards, and we actually saw him go down. But now we're going to get to put these mega meats to, quote unquote, a real test, like some big, hardy animals. And as soon as I switched to the mega meats, man, the kudu started showing up. A couple afternoons in after we shot the Gims buck, big kudu bull comes in. I think that one ended up being 54 inches, 53 and a half. Shot him. He was perfectly broadside at about 21 yards, so a good close shot. And he did the mule kick. We got all this on video and took off running, and you could see the blood pumping out of him. So we get out of the blind. It was a 10-ring shot. Get out of the blind, go pick up the broadhead, and arrow obviously covered in blood. Pick up the blood trail, and he probably went 60, 70 yards. And I showed you this at lunch today.
Yeah.
It is the most horrific, gory animal I have ever walked up, that I've ever walked up on after shooting it with any kind of a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, blood was blown 8 feet out of him in a huge circle around him, and the entry hole was the size of my fist. I mean, we had 2 trackers or 3 trackers that came in to help us get him out, and a driver, and seeing the expressions on their faces. These guys have tracked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wounded animals and recovered hundreds of animals.
Yeah.
And seeing the expressions on their faces was unbelievable. I mean, Corey, the guy we were hunting with, he's like, I've never seen anything like this. I have never seen anything like this. Lucas, I don't think you've ever seen anything like this. I mean, it literally was like you threw a hand grenade through him. it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, one off. That's I hit him good right through the pocket. No scapula. It was just a really good shot. And so I thought, it's a one-off event. The axis deer was pretty gory. This one was insane. So next up was a wildebeest. And same thing. I mean, it blew through him and just like buckets of blood blowing out of him. And I'm not going to keep beating on this horse, but the point being, I've never shot a broadhead more devastating than G5 Mega Meat.
Yep.
I'm going to probably shoot, no, I'm not probably, I'm going to shoot everything else that I hunt until something better comes out, from elk all the way down to rabbit will be with the Mega Meat. I will keep a T2 in my quiver as almost a fixed blade head. Guys, if you want maximum penetration out of a mechanical broadhead, T2. Quartering 2, got no problem. Scapulas, got no problem. 2-inch cut. if it was not for the mega meat, I would be all in on the T2. But the mega meat, 5 animals, 2 kudu, wildebeest, roan, nyala, axis deer, all of them just destroyed. And I know it's going to perform great on whitetail. There's a reason why that broadhead is the #1 seller in North America. And having tested it, I knew it was good, but after shooting these animals with it and really seeing how it performs on live animals, it is on a whole nother level of anything that we've shot. So can't say enough about that. Funny, not funny, but crazy story on this hunt was the nyala. Nyala bull is probably one of the prettiest antelope in Africa. They're absolutely gorgeous. I've shot a few of them and had an opportunity to hunt one in South Africa. I came back to do a little work, and when I say I came back to do a little work, we've got a photographic camp over there. And I went in to look at some new facilities that we have and kind of just check in on everything. And then, you know, I mean, if you're going to be in Africa, you might as well hunt, right? So after my work day, I say that in air quotes, we hunted for 2 or 3 days, and we hunted on a beautiful property. And the guy that owns the property's got a helicopter, and he actually picked us up in his helicopter. So we got the royal treatment, flew us into his camp in a helicopter, and that was really neat to do. I've only flown in a helicopter a couple of times up in the Northwest Territory on some sheep hunts, and hadn't done a whole lot. And if you've never flown in a helicopter, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're in a big go-kart. The thing goes straight up. It's loud, but this guy was a heck of a pilot, and this was a really nice helicopter. But anyway, into the nyala hunt, they really like the thickets and around rivers and creeks and water. That's their big thing. They're found like in the Zululand, Natal part of South Africa up into southern Mozambique. That's kind of their native area. We were a little bit west of that. And there was a good herd of them. This is a thick kind of mountainous area that we were in, had a river through it, had this big lake that had some hippos in it. And we decided to go up to where kind of the mouth of this lake and creek come together in this real big thicket and see if we can find any of the nyala. And it was kind of middle of the day. And we get up there, and sure enough, there's 2 bulls in there. They're together. And they kind of spook off from us. And so there's a road system around this lake, and we go around to the other side of the road, and we spot them down in this bottom. And I get off the Land Cruiser and put a stalk on them. And I get up to where I'm like 34 yards, but they're in the thicket, and I'm elevated. I'm above them, shooting down into the thicket, and he has no idea that I'm there. I was able to sneak in and get in a position, but they were just kind of in the shade for midday, and they weren't moving. And so he was slightly quartering to, but I had a good window, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get drawn, see how I feel. Of course, I get drawn back, pin settles right in where it needs to be, and I'm like, all right, I'm sending it. So touched it off, arrow goes, hits him. I know it's a little bit back, and he spins, takes off. He and the other one take off running. We give it about 20, 30 minutes. Here in the U.S., man, I would be like, we need to give him 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit back. They're like, no, can't do that. The hyenas, jackals, you know, everything will get on him and start eating him. Maybe even a leopard will find him. Not normally in the middle of the day for the leopards, but the other stuff will find him pretty quick. So they're always real anxious to get on the blood trail. So we go down, immediately find blood. Can't find the arrow. We looked for it for a while. Never did find that arrow. I know it went all the way through him. Start falling blood. Get about 80 yards away, and we see one standing there. And glass. It's obviously not him. This one runs off. Walk a little bit further. We see the one I shot. And we think he is dead. Like, dang, he didn't go 80 yards. And I know I hit him back. So we get up there, And there's a little bit of a debate. Andre, I hope you're listening to this podcast because you will remember this very well. But Andre says he's dead, and man, I could see his ears up. Anytime an animal's got his ears up, even though he's laying down, he ain't dead.
Yeah.
When they die, their ears flop.
Yep.
So we kind of didn't argue, but I was like, man, I don't know. We need to just sit here for a little bit. And he's like, nah, he's dead. Let's go get him. So we walk up there, and the dang thing jumps up. I had an arrow knocked, and I had my release ready, and I tried to get drawn to shoot him again, but he jumped up, and he took off running, and he ran straight to the lake. And we thought, well, he ain't going to get away from us. Plus, not to get graphic again, but half of his insides were hanging out of him. That thing had put a massive hole in him. And of course, now I want to shoot this thing as quickly as possible so it's not suffering. I want to get it done and dusted as quick as I can. Almost to the point where I'm like, man, run back to the truck, get a rifle. Let's finish this thing off. And we didn't. Because we were sure it was going to die, and I could maybe slip up to it and get another arrow in it. And I had a iron wheel fixed blade head. I was out of the T2s, and we were in some thickets, and I wanted to get make sure I got, if I had to shoot through any brush, I had a fixed blade there to shoot. Lo and behold, get up to him, and he's bedded right on the edge of the lake. And he is on his last leg. But I get up, sneak up to him, and I shoot him again with that iron wheel through the shoulder, out the chest. And as so often happens, they have that last bit of adrenaline in them. Jump up, right into the lake he goes. Dives into the lake, swims out in the middle of that lake, and sinks to the bottom. Dude, I was, blown away. This beautiful Nyala bull is now in the middle of this lake. There's hippos in the lake, and he sunk to the bottom. And he's got a hole. He's got 2 holes in him. So I'm like, this thing's gonna fill up with water. How are we gonna get this thing out of there? So we're sitting there talking about it, and Andre's like, I'm gonna swim out there and get him. It's like, man, you ain't swimming out there and getting this thing. There's no way that you're gonna be able to swim out there and get him. He's like, well, I'm going to swim out there and at least figure out exactly where he is, and then maybe we can get a rope or something, and I can swim down and rope his horns. And all this looked good on paper. So he sure enough takes his shirt off, got his shoes and blue jeans on. He swims out there. Well, he almost sinks. His boots filled up with water. His jeans got heavy. I was like, oh, my God, we're going to have to call in the special forces to get Andre and the Nyala out of this lake. So thank goodness he obviously didn't get to the Nyala, and he made it back to shore. We got out of there. So the plan was we're going to build like a seine hook out of rebar, and then obviously tie a rope to it and throw it out there. The spot was only probably 20 yards from shore. Mm-hmm. So if we had to, we could get a boat and get out there with some poles and start poking around and trying to find him. So we drove all the way back to camp, which was about an hour and 20-minute drive, and went into the shop. And Richard, the guy that owns the property, very industrial, very good with equipment and machinery. He made this incredible. He took like 2-3 pieces of rebar, welded them together, bent them around, filed down the edges so they were sharp, put a hook on the end of it. I mean, it was like, voila, MacGyver. I've got this grappling hook that we can go back and seine with. So I'm spirits are up a little bit, and Richard is like, we're not driving back over there. I'm going to send the trackers and the Land Cruiser. We're taking the helicopter. It's like, fine by me. So we get in the helicopter, sends the trackers. We took the grappling hook with us in the helicopter with the rope, send the trackers back over. I think they had a little small boat and maybe some poles to poke around with, and hop in the helicopter Up over the mountain we go, down on the other side. We kind of do a bypass around the lake, and lo and behold, the old Nyala has floated to the top. So we see him floating there, but the hippos are back in the water. So a little bit nerve-wracking. We landed, got out, went over there, had a 458 lot, which is a big, for guys that don't know what that is, that's a big caliber, like buffalo, elephant type gun. And one guy kept a bead on the hippos while Richard and I flipped the grappling hook over the Nyala, finally got it hooked, pulled him to shore, and the rest is history. So we got that guy in, and then did I talk about the roan earlier? Yeah, number 2. Yeah, I talked about the roan. So that was the last hunt was the roan, and also shot him with the mega meat. Made a really good shot on him at a pretty far distance, but they're a giant animal, 700 pounds. And I actually watched him go down. It was in kind of an open savanna area with acacia trees, and shot him. And he went about 100 yards, turned around, and did the old janky leg, stumbling, went down. And we knew he was big, but when an animal's 700 pounds, until you get over there to him and actually see the horns, you just can't really tell how big they are. And just a world-class animal, one that I'll never forget. I mean, I've been fortunate to shoot some big whitetails, big red stag, big doll sheep in Alaska, but this thing is, I mean, he is mega giant in the African realm of things. So very, very happy to get him. Great trip to Africa, and I look forward to getting back over there. I guess the takeaways, it seems like on every trip you always learn a few things, and how I can relate this to whitetail hunting. One thing that we always talk about is controlling what you can control. We went into a brush blind the trackers had made for us on a water hole, because the permanent blind on that water hole was on, the wind was wrong for it. But we really wanted to hunt this blind because there had been tails of a really big kudu coming into this water hole. We kept waiting for the wind to switch, and it wasn't going to. So we took matters into our own hands, or the trackers did, and they built this incredible brush blind. I mean, it looked like a tree. It was amazing how good of a job they did. We go to it in the morning to get into it, and I get in it, and they've got 2 windows. They're not bow hunters, right? Yeah. But they got 2 windows. One is facing out straight in front of us in case something comes around from that way. The other one is facing the water hole. So I look at the one facing the water hole, and it's got half the water. I can shoot half the water hole.
Yep.
So immediately in my brain, I say, okay, I know what's going to happen. Bull's going to come into the backside of the water hole, drink, leave. I'm not going to be able to get a shot. What should I have done, Lucas?
I don't know.
Built another window in that brush blind where I could shoot the back half of the water hole. That's what I should have done. I didn't do it. I said, I convinced myself, which you're not supposed to do. Convinced myself, hey, if he comes in, he's going to meander around, wander around a little bit, and I'll be able to shoot him when he comes into this window. Right? I justified it. Shouldn't have done that. Just like that hanging limb that you don't want to shoot out of your shooting lane for your whitetail hunting. I can bend down under it, or I can shoot right over it. What ends up happening is you shoot that limb right dead center and you miss the deer. It always happens. So I should have made a new window. I didn't do it. What happens? Exactly. You could not have scripted it better. I look, you can kind of see through the brush blind a little bit, and I see a kudu cow coming, and I can just kind of see her, and I leaned up where I could see through that little bit of thinner brush, and what is it? Here comes the big bull. He's right behind her. When I say he's right behind her, he's like licking her on the back, grunting at her. And Corey, the guy we're with, he's like, oh yeah, that's him, that's him. Well, they come into the water on that backside. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they got a little whiff of us or what, but they spooked and they took off running. Gone. And I wanted to pull my pocket knife out, stab myself in the leg. I was so mad at myself for not fixing that window.
Yeah.
And Corey was like, oh, don't worry, they'll be back. The bull didn't get to drink. They'll be back, they'll be back, they'll be back. And I said, Corey, we got to put another window in this ground blind. He said, what do you mean? I said, that bull, I could have shot that bull this morning, just now, if I'd had a window on that back side of the blind. He's like, okay, let's do it. So we spent the next 30 minutes fixing another window so I could shoot the back side of the blind. Now, the kudu normally drink. The rule of thumb is it's kind of a 10 to 2 is when they come and drink, middle of the day. Sometimes they'll come in early, sometimes they'll come in late in the afternoon, but a lot of times they water between 10 and 2. They're kind of a midday drinker. So this was 10 o'clock in the morning, and now we're like, they're not going to be back till 5. We're going to have to sit here all day, and whether they do come back at all, who knows. So we sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there. And about 1:30, we get our lunch out of. We got a little lunch box. We get our lunch box out, eat a little bit of lunch, putting our lunch up. Here comes a little kudu bull from that same backside. Mm-hmm. He comes lumbering right in, drinks water. I'm looking out of my new ground blind hole, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can smoke your butt right here. Here comes a cow. Here comes another cow. When I'm saying cow, that's a female kudu. And then behind that second cow is that big 55-incher. He's right behind her. He's grunting at her like a whitetail. He's licking her around her tail. I mean, he is hot as he can be. Yeah. And they come right in to the back side of that water hole. And I've got a camera guy with me, and he's like, Joe, I got him. I got drawn. I leaned out to my new hole and zipped one right through him. 15, 16 yards, turns around. Mega meat just blew him up. Point being, when you think you need to fix something, fix it.
Yep.
When you think, if this is not fixed, this animal could come in this way and cause me major problems. Control what you can control. Have your setup as dialed as you possibly can have it dialed.
Yep.
Just another prime example of if it can happen, it will happen. So that was a takeaway. Just reiterating again, fix your stuff, do the stuff the way it's supposed to be done the first time, and don't justify something that you know is not right. Mm-hmm. If you know it's not right, if you know the wind's wrong, don't say, oh, maybe he'll come from another way. Get out of there. If you need to trim a few more shooting lanes and got to walk back or drive back home an hour to get the saw, drive back home and get the saw. If your arrow is not tuned exactly right and you see a little fishtail in it, man, spend the time to get it right. Do the stuff the way it's supposed to be done. So that was a little lesson or a little takeaway from Africa. Another one was sight, light, and rangefinder. So I didn't think there was a light for the Black Gold dual track sight, but there is. There is a light they make that screws on the top of it. I'm glad to know that. That would have solved all my issues. The problem I had in the Kalahari, really white sand, almost like beach sand.
Yep.
And clear skies makes outside super bright off that white sand and super bright outside, and then we're in a dark ground blind. So when you would hold your sight up, you can see the physical part of the pin, but you can't see the fiber optic. It's just black.
Yeah.
Because it's so bright what you're looking into. So what I ended up doing was taking, this is something I saw John Dudley do, and he learned it from somebody, but I fired off one of the lighted knocks, put it on top of my housing where the fiber optics are, and duct taped it up there, and then it just made everything glow. And then I could actually see the pins. But that's where a light would have come in handy.
Yep.
And then in the evenings, we would still have shooting light, but you couldn't see the pins because you're in a dark blind.
Yeah.
So you need ground blind hunting, super bright conditions. You need a light, or you can use a lighted knock. And again, you just fire the knock off, make it turn bright, and then tape it on top of your housing, and it works just like a light.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a backup trick that John Dudley did, and I saw that, and I'm glad he put that out there, because that definitely helped. But definitely need a light there, and then also rangefinder. Now, guys, I asked this. I've got a Leica, or I've got Leica binoculars that have a built-in rangefinder, and the printout or the LED is red. Mm-hmm. And man, when I would range in that white bright light out of that dark ground blind, I couldn't see the readout. So what I would have to do is range and then push the binoculars over to the dark wall, and then the readout would still be there. But I was nervous if I was ranging the exact right spot. So I'm not sure with those Leicas if you can change it to black, or if there is, I've never used the Vortex or any of the other things, but that was an issue that I have that I've got to correct, because it could have cost me big time.
Yeah.
If I'd had something come in 36, 38 yards on the other side of the water hole, and I tried to range it and I couldn't get a good range because I couldn't see the readout. So I've got to work on that and get that figured out. So that was, let's see, that's kind of the two lessons learned on the trip. Again, not assuming anything. If it needs to be fixed, fix it immediately. And then I got to dive into some rangefinder solutions for that one setting, where it's super bright out and you can't see the readout.
Yep.
And I'm not so sure that you can't change the readout to black. And I bet that would work better. I'm going to have to experiment with that, and I'll get back to everybody on that with what I find. But yeah, guys, that was kind of the Africa trip. Mega meat and T2s, you don't need to worry about those one bit. Incredible broadheads. Africa is in my blood. It always has been. I worked over there for 7 years as an apprentice and then a professional hunter for 2.5 seasons, and loved it. And I try to go back over there every year, every other year. And I really, really got the bug again this past trip, to the point that I'm thinking about opening up some bow hunting opportunities over there, maybe like an Osseo bow camp. That one place we went where I shot the Nyala is just beautiful. He's got giant kudu, he's got big Cape buffalo, big eland, bunch of impala, bunch of wildebeest, warthog, zebra. I mean, he's got lots and lots of stuff. So maybe down the road we can get an Osseo bow hunting camp in Africa. So guys, if any of y'all are interested in hunting Africa, bow hunting Africa, rifle hunting Africa, whatever, let me know. Send us an email or message, Mission Whitetail, or to joe@osseogear.com, and see what you think. The Africa hunting is reasonable, especially in like Botswana, Namibia, South Africa. You can go do a kudu and maybe another animal or two for what it would cost to do an elk hunt, a really good elk hunt here in North America. So pretty reasonable, a lot of fun. The beauty is seasons are opposite. So their winter is now, May, June, July, August. So you can continue hunting when whitetail season's out, and you can get all your new gear dialed and ready. So yeah, guys, anybody interested in Africa, let me know. But that's all we got today. When this airs, Lucas and I will be in Argentina.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Hunting red stag. So we're going to give them heck down there. We'll have a full report about that trip. And I appreciate it, fellows. Any comments, anything you guys want us to dive into, send us some messages, let us know, and we'll cover them. You got anything else, Lucas?
Nope.
That's it, guys. Thank y'all very much. We appreciate it.